budget is prepared with focus on program and service delivery and to the level of service approved by council, and always mindful of the impact to the general levy and our property owners. So Vanessa is going to kick off the presentation. She'll talk a little bit about the budget document, the budget process, our proposed levy increase, and what that will mean to our property owners. And she'll also detail some elements of influencing the programs and service delivery.
Thank you, Tom. The presentation before you highlights the 2024 proposed budget for operating and capital. The full budget booklet will be released and available on the town's website end of day tomorrow. The budget document will be electronic like it was last year and look very similar. On the slide in front of you is some of the table of contents of key items. So we have the transmittal, the executive summary. The next section here we call the PSAB budget. This section will not be available in tomorrow's version. It will be available for the deliberation version when we have that in January. That's just a portion of the budget where we restate the operating, capital, and reserve budgets using the accrual basis of accounting, which is required for the Public Sector Accounting Board and is required to be approved before we can adopt the budget. So we will have that ready for deliberations. The next section is the recommended new staffing enhancements, and that section is where you'll see administration provide significant detail around each of the enhancements, including some justifications for each request, the impact on the budget, as well as the impact to the town should that position not be approved. The following sections are on the three budget areas: operating, life cycle, and reserve, followed by the supplementary or appendix information, and the two areas that you would highlight there is the budget process as well as the revenue and expenditure analysis. On the next slide, this is just a visual representation of the budget development process. From beginning to end, normally it's around a 4-month period, commencing in August or September, tabling in November, and aiming to adopt in January of the following year. Some key milestones to note here. So we had the pre-budget council consultation September 12th of this year. Their administration presented council with an estimate of 5.15 levy increase net of growth. At that time, we identified some of the key or known items, but did note that there were some other items outstanding that we'd have to go back to the table and review. So from there till about October, that's when administration was able to create their initial draft of the budget, which resulted in an 8.96% increase to the levy. After which there were multiple reviews and discussion sessions with the CAO and members of the senior management team here, where we were able to find some cost savings, some deferrals, additional revenue sources, and had to make some decisions on how to utilize transfer of reserves for any one-time expenditures. Doing so, we were able to bring our tax increase down to 5.55%, and that's what we are presenting tonight. And we will dive into that a lot further in the following slides. But before I do that, I did want to point out some of the key dates and some changes this year. One of those is the public engagement session. So following tonight, the budget document, some budget training information, as well as videos and audio from tonight's slides will be made available on the community engagement website, so Please Speak. This will happen later this week and into next week. So we plan to use this platform as a way to allow our residents a way to provide feedback on the proposed budget, which will be shared with the administrative staff and taken into consideration during the deliberation process prior to adopting the budget. And then a few other key dates to take away. So council deliberation will be held on January 16th. We also have the 17th penciled in if needed. Those will be held here at the town and open to the public. After that, we hope to have a bylaw brought to council on January 23rd, where we would approve the final budget. So the next slide, the 2024 proposed budget requires a municipal general tax levy of $28.9 million. This is a $1.5 million increase, or 5.55% increase versus our prior year approved budget. If you factor in the assessment growth that we are anticipating for 2024, that suggests a 5.84% increase to the municipal tax rate from the 2023 approved budget. So this means the average residential property, which in Tecumseh is valued at about $250,000, you will see an annual increase of $110 to the municipal portion of the tax levy. So in the table here, we're breaking down the components that make up this increase, the biggest drivers this year being operations net of growth with 2.22%, followed by inflationary or non-controllable items 1.82%, and our life cycle and capital 1.44%. So we will dive deeper into each one of these throughout the presentation. The consolidated levy, we are estimating at 4.74%. At this time, this is an estimate as the county and the education rates have not been released. Our assumptions here is that we will have no change to the education rate as we haven't seen one for the past few years, but we are estimating a 5% increase to be received by the county. So again, the average residential property assessed at $250,000. This would mean a $175 increase annually for property taxes. As mentioned above, 110 of that being municipally driven, $65 coming from the county's levy. And then the last point I just wanted to talk about was regarding assessment of our properties. So the last impact assessment was based on January 1, 2016, which is over like 8 years ago. There was a postponement of the reassessment for the past 4 years. Due to COVID, the Ontario government did postpone the 2020 assessment. In August of this past year, the Ontario government filed a regulation to amend the Assessment Act, which essentially extended that postponement till the end of 2024. So what this means for the general resident is that the assessment for 2024 will be identical to 2023, provided you haven't made any significant changes to your building, haven't done any augmentations or installed a pool or something like that. Next slide. So the budget rates that we discussed so far are really looking at 1 year out to 2024. However, it is important for us to extend our forecasting beyond 1 year, because that helps us plan for the future, keeping focus on our longer-term goals and objectives of council. So it helps us decide where and how to spend our money and see the impact now, but also the impact on future levies. So this chart here shows a 5-year projection of the tax levy increases. It includes known or likely budget drivers, as well as estimates for some inflationary increases on certain expenditures and revenue items. The projection here is broken up into 3 sections. We have our operating, capital, and assessment growth. And just for reference, a 1% change here represents about $250,000 in the levy increase. In summary here, although this year we are proposing a 5.55% increase, you can see that we're forecasting 6.23% increase in 2025, and then around a 3% increase for the following 3 years. So some key items that are really driving this are some placeholders that we've put there for the food and organic waste collection, as well as some initiatives that we have around our Indigenous community. We also have assessment growth calculated in here as well. That is in line with our expectations and council's strategic priorities. Next slide. So while you're reviewing the 2024 budget booklet, you'll have the opportunity to see all of the key drivers, but I know that it's very intensive and we want to highlight some of the key ones for you before diving into the document. So we have total growth estimated here for 2024 of 135,000. This is divided by in two sections, 210 for additional tax revenue and a slight decrease, 75,000 for supplemental tax. And that's simply because we're unaware at this time of anything that could be going on that would drive an addition to the roll during 2024. These numbers may change. By the time we get to deliberations, we will have a final returned roll from MPACT. We will share that information with you at that time. $85,000 increase we have for user charges. So that is mainly stemming from increases in activity fees. That's ice rentals, hall rentals, and just increases on various recreational programs. On the buildings department financials, you'll also see some substantial decreases in permit revenue. And this is mainly driven by economic challenges that are being faced, which are resulting in some delays in construction. But all of that is transferred to reserve, so net nil impact to the tax levy. Also, investment income, as you've seen in some of the financials that have been brought forth to Council for 2023, we are currently sitting on a more than normal amount of cash in the bank due to delays in various capital projects. Because of that, we've benefited from the high interest rates and have seen significant investment income. We do forecast similar revenues in 2024, a $1.1 million increase we're putting in the budget. Again, transferring all of that to reserves. That will taper off in future years as capital projects get started and cash flow gets diminished a little bit and rates start to level out. Next slide. On the expenditure side, so contributions to capital, a $400,000 increase here includes allocations to capital and life cycle programs, including our new infrastructure levy. This budgetary increase represents about a quarter of the overall levy increase, but is necessary to support the town's strategic priorities of sustainable growth, community health and wellness, and service experience. And that will be discussed further in the presentation. Payroll increases we have at $737,000. We will dive into that on the following slide. We have an $83,000 decrease from OPP contracts, which was discussed in the previous presentation. In discussions with our insurance brokers, we're anticipating another year of about 15% increases on insurance premiums from last year's. So that's driving the $86,000. And on contracts, what's making that amount up? We have $60,000 for initiatives geared towards our Indigenous community, which I believe will have a report to Council next month. Contractual increases also for garbage collection, IRCA, and outsourcing for park improvements such as cement work and inspections for playsets. $75,000 increase on computer software. Here there is a little bit of new items, including around $15,000 for legal related software to support some of the new services that are being taken in-house. However, this increase is mainly due to inflationary pressures as well as cloud-based subscription models. So for the past few years, we have seen about a 5% increase from our vendors, and also with software programs migrating to the cloud, the annual subscription models are being adopted, which are resulting in some increases in our operating costs. In professional fees, you see a $308,000 increase, which relates to our Housing Action Plan initiative. However, in the budget, the amount is fully offset by grant funding, which is pending approval. We do anticipate having results by the end of the year, and we'll provide that information during deliberations. And lastly, maintenance services of $157,000, deriving mainly of storm flushing and video inspections for our storm sewers. Street lights, we've changed our vendor and have seen some increased cost in LED light replacements, and then some building maintenance costs here as well. This table shows the key drivers for the changes in payroll. These are positions, mostly for the first 2 points, are positions that have been added through the various reviews that were mentioned earlier. So the 2021 org review, in there is a transportation supervisor for public works, a business analyst, and an IT help desk for technology and client services. The building review, from there we have a deputy CBO, which was approved in the 2023 budget. What you're seeing here for 2024 is the remainder of bringing it to a full year complement. The HR review, we have a people and culture business partner, as well as a people and culture coordinator, and that came from the HR review. For legislative services, we have 2 positions, a records management coordinator, following the recommendations of the corporate records and information management review, as well as a payroll and prosecution coordinator, which is also following a recommendation from the 2002 Legislative Services Service Delivery Review. The asks in community and recreation services are in response to growing recreational amenities and programs. So here we have a leader of recreational facilities to support the arena, pool, and community center, a program and events leader, as well as some minor changes in staffing to support pool and day camp activities offered throughout the town. The other amount of $350, as it says, includes contractual salary and benefit increases for our current staffing complement. The key items in here include a placeholder that we've put for benefit increases of about 12% of recent actuals. As you're aware, we are currently out to tender for a benefits provider. Although we have not awarded that yet, early indications are showing some signs of savings here. We will share the results of the tender at deliberations, and we can make adjustments as needed. Another noteworthy item here is the increase in OMERS benefits. This is mainly due to the increase in the number of members, which is driven by part-time employee eligibility. This slide underscores some changes to the budget allocation aimed at enhancing reporting efficiencies and transparency. So these 3 modifications will come up frequently during our deliberations as we go through the budget in detail and see shifts from the reallocation of budget amounts. So the first relates to external legal services being consolidated under legislative and clerk services department. The purpose here was to align our reporting with our structural change in duties that are being taken on by the director. The exception to this will be anything labor related. Given the nature of these, they will remain with people and culture. Next, all building maintenance and janitorial supplies expenses are going to be centralized under the maintenance department, which is under community and recreation services. Again, this is to align with reporting responsibilities. The exceptions here are arena-related maintenance and fire-related janitorial supplies. These will remain in the respective departments. And lastly, we have consolidated all of the retiree benefits under corporate shared, allowing us better visibility into the overall cost associated with this. So this document is one of those slides you may want to keep with you as you're reviewing the budget document. Again, it will be revisited during deliberations and discussed at various points throughout that. Now, there are a few items that could impact the municipal levy that have not had a provision made in this budget at this time. First being recommendations that may come from the fire master plan, costs associated with the HRIS payroll and time and attendance system, as well as potential costs related to the ongoing lottery license litigation. Though no significant changes here from prior year, as you can see, property tax continues to make up the biggest portion of the town's revenues at 81%. The other bigger piece is user charges and investment income, which is around 5 to 8%. As you can see, there's limited ability for the town to generate any income outside of taxation. And this chart here combines tax, water, and wastewater. So it is the total burden to the resident for a comparative with our neighbors. So as you can see, Tecumseh continues to remain as the second lowest in combined tax, property tax, and wastewater user rates when calculated for a home at $250,000 assessed value with a monthly water usage of 20 cubic meters. This table itemizes the levy into the three authorities, municipal, county, and education, showing the impact from each. So as we discussed earlier with the proposed 2024 budget, the average residential property is assessed at $250,000. They would pay an additional $175 annually. That's made up of $110 driven by the municipal rate and the remaining $65 from the increase expected from the county. The overall tax rate is expected to increase approximately 4.74%. I will pass it on to Tom to discuss water, wastewater, and capital items.
Thanks, Vanessa. So turning to our rate-supported services, municipal water and wastewater services are provided to Tecumseh residents based on a user pay structure whereby rates are intended to generate revenue sufficient to sustain both operating and capital needs for both services. The town's recently updated rate study was adopted by Council in May of 2023, maintaining the rate structure in place, which includes a combination of fixed and variable rate charges. The 2024 budget follows the recommendations of the study that calls for a 3% increase to both fixed and volume rate charges. This rate increase will result in a $32 increase to total annual charges to the average residential user consuming 20 cubic meters of water per month. Rate revenues generated for 2024 should total about $11.5 million. That will provide for an allocation to capital reserve funds of around $4.3 million. So that represents a projected shortfall of about $300,000 as compared to our rate study. Next slide, please. Some key items that are included within the 2024 budget include significant inflationary increases to wastewater treatment costs, resulting in a $200,000 increase or 13% increase over last year. Wastewater treatment services are provided by the City of Windsor as per our service agreement with the city and call for the town to have a proportionate share of treatment plant costs. The past 2 years have seen extraordinary increases in plant treatment costs, partly due to inflationary pressures on plant costs, but however magnified by declining volumes treated at plants the past 2 years. So the declining volumes underscores the impact of inflow and infiltration into the system. The town also intends to reintroduce our annual sewer flushing program, which will be phased in over a couple of budget years. This will increase maintenance service costs by $75,000 in 2024 and another $75,000 in 2025. An annual flushing program is considered best practice and is included within our maintenance program and our asset management plan. The wastewater capital budget will feature continuation of our multi-year phased approach to sanitary service extensions in the Old Castle area. Sanitary servicing in Old Castle has been divided into two areas, the North Talbot Road area and the 8th concession area, which we heard a little bit about earlier today. A cost recovery bylaw for the 8th concession area is to be created in 2024 that will enable the town to embark on the phases in this area. Construction will commence on two of these phases in 2024, being the County Road 46 Webster Laval sanitary extension and the Del Duca Drive sanitary extension. The town has also undertaken a sanitary sewer model update as part of our flood mitigation measures. This study is anticipated to be completed in 2024 and will include recommendations and improvements to our system. Early indications suggest those projects will require in excess of $30 million to implement. It is expected that this study will provide data on the impact of inflow and infiltration from private property as well. Construction is planned to commence in 2024 to service a portion of the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan area. This project is a key component of Council's capital priority setting exercise completed in 2022 and will be a catalyst for development growth for the town. Next slide, please. So some key items in the water budget. Inflationary increases to our bulk water purchases that for the past few years have been higher than our past experience. So an increase of $97,000 or 6.4% is included in the 2024 budget. And this accounts for under budgeted increase for 2023 and a provision for an inflationary increase in 2024. The town purchases water in bulk from the Windsor Utilities Commission based on a 50-year agreement that calls for annual rate increases equal to CPI. The water capital budget includes several projects that are associated and driven by county road projects, including County Road 42-43 water infrastructure improvements. The town was successful with the ISIP Green Stream 2021 intake, which will allow the town to advance water main replacement in the Centennial Woodbridge area. This grant will contribute up to 73% of project cost to a maximum of just shy of $2.6 million. Design has commenced and construction is anticipated for 2025. And finally, water servicing of a portion of the Tecumseh Hamlet secondary area, which will coincide with the wastewater servicing. Next slide, please. So budgeting with respect to capital projects follows a two-step process. The budget, as we are presenting today, includes funding allocations to reserves that are the primary funding source for capital projects. Required allocations to reserves are based on various plans and studies, including our asset management plan and DC background study, and many others which are detailed within the budget document. Once the budget is adopted by council, departments will then bring forward their 5-year capital plans, seeking council approval to proceed with specific projects. A capital strategic workshop was conducted by the town during the spring of 2022. The intent of that workshop was to prioritize the many capital projects planned for the 10-year planning horizon for public works and recreation services. That workshop has been used as the basis for development of the 5-year capital plans for both these departments. The primary funding source for our capital programs is our capital reserves. The town's capital reserves include a suite of life cycle reserves that are established to fund asset replacement. And then we also utilize our infrastructure reserve, which is funded through the new infrastructure levy, and that is intended to fund new or enhanced assets. The 2024 budget includes a $200,000 increase to our life cycle reserves, bringing the annual allocation to $9.1 million. Our annual allocation, our required allocation, is $9.8 million. That was updated during this year's budget process to account for significant cost inflation with respect to fire apparatus and fleet. The budget also includes a $200,000 increase to our new infrastructure levy, bringing that annual allocation to $2.15 million. Our required annual target is $2.35 million and was last updated during our last DC background study. So this required annual allocation will be updated in sync with the DC background study that will be undertaken in 2024. Our funding mix also includes the grant partnership funding and the use of debt. Debt is typically used for long-lived assets and in cases where our own reserves and grant partnership funding are inadequate. The town is limited in the amount of debt it can assume. Our current debt load is considered low by provincial metrics at about 3% of our own source revenues. All grant and partnership opportunities are pursued. Grants and partnerships, although they are welcome, can have an impact on our capital planning and priorities as they often are tied to deadlines. County and city capital programs can also have an impact on our capital planning and prioritization as earlier identified with respect to County Road 42 and 43 improvements. Next slide. So as mentioned, 5-year capital works plans will be brought forward to Council by way of Council reports early in the new year, and they will recommend specific projects to be undertaken for 2024 and will seek Council approval. A preliminary listing of capital projects that will likely be included within those reports is included within this budget document. So 2 major areas for capital projects are identified earlier were recreation and public works, and those 2 areas were the focus of the capital priority setting exercise, and we have slides dedicated to each. This one is dedicated to the recreation and cultural amenities as guided by the Special Council meeting of March 29, 2022. In 2024, we anticipate projects of Lacoste Grandstand, so that's complete the project that was commenced this year and recommending Phase 2. Lakewood Park amenities, including water feature, washrooms, and a pavilion. Southfield Park splash pad. Maidstone Rec Center outdoor washrooms. Cata Library completing the renovation commenced this year. And sports field turf management program. And for public works projects are guided by the Special Council meeting of May 2022 that considered several influencing factors, including development and growth, climate change and flood mitigation, Tecumseh Roads Main Street, awarded grant funding, and coordination with county projects. Some of the projects included for 2024 included were water and wastewater related and were previously noted, those being Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan Area, so that's water and wastewater servicing of the Northwest Quadrant, County Road 42, 43 Phase 1 improvements, and Old Castle sanitary extensions. Other notable projects include Scully and St. Mark's Storm Pump Station replacement and improvement, and this is a multi-year project that will commence construction this year, and PJ Cecile Storm Pump Station replacement. There are many more of the projects planned and included within the budget document. Next slide, please. So in all, the budget document includes capital projects for 2024 totaling over $68 million. So I've mentioned many of the projects already. However, this slide includes a listing of major projects planned, including those for departments outside of Public Works and Recreation. It also includes reference to some funding sources in addition to our reserves, so including grants, partnerships, owner contributions through Part 12 charges and development charges. The town has been accumulating Canada Community Building Fund, or CCBF, and OCIF grant funding the past several years, and will be putting a significant amount of those funds to use in 2024, with $3 million of our OCIF funds to go towards the Scully St. Mark's project, and $2 million of CCBF funding to go to each of the sanitary extension projects. Repayment of debt will amount to $1.6 million in 2024. The town's reserves and reserve funds have been growing the past few years as several large projects have been in the design and engineering phases leading up to construction. So 2023 year-end estimated balances for our reserve and reserve funds amount to $77 million. We've highlighted the 2 major reserves on this slide that we use to fund our capital program, being our life cycle reserves and our infrastructure reserve. So 2024 anticipates construction to commence and or continue on several major initiatives. We anticipate using $7.4 million in infrastructure reserves and $35 million of our life cycle reserves. Net draw on our reserve funds is estimated to be $34 million in 2024. Next slide, please. So for the outlook years for our reserves reflect continuance of our capital works strategy pertaining to public works and recreation, pressures that we will experience and have been experiencing the past year or so come from annual expenditures well above average and far greater than contributions, challenging both physical capacity to complete and financial resources. Material and labor cost inflation, where construction inflation is far greater than consumer price index. Construction industry capacity constraints and higher borrowing rates. So we do have some mitigating measures that will help to counter some of the pressures, and those include the strength of the town's life cycle program and reserves that will provide financial flexibility. The town has been successful with grant and partnership opportunities and will continue to pursue others. The town has borrowing capacity, and developers can opt to finance and recover servicing costs. So in closing, the 2024 proposed budget incorporates council's adopted capital priority setting plans. It continues implementation of the organization review. It includes implementation of recommendations coming from corollary reviews. It includes modernization and efficiency initiatives. It advances on council and community strategic priorities with reference to the planned implementation of the Housing Accelerator Plan. And it proposes a fair value tax increase to property owners. So next steps, as Vanessa mentioned, the budget document will be posted to the town's website end of day tomorrow. We will notify members of council once it is available. Budget deliberations are scheduled for a special council meeting on January 16th, commencing at 4 o'clock, and we have a backup date reserved as well if needed on January 17th. And budget approval can occur as early as regular council meeting on January 23rd.